Hello, this is Photography Gamer. Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode of the VP Guide, I will be using Batman Arkham Knight to demonstrate several photo examples of Catwoman in her 3 different outfits. So I'm going to talk you through the process, give you some insight into why I took the shot, and try to throw in a few tips here and there that you can use when taking photos yourself. So I'm going to use 3 different outfits for Catwoman and explain what the outfits, in my opinion, lead me towards, like what shots they lead me to, and then take a few 3 or 4 examples with each that I feel fit the style of the outfit, the colours, etc. Okay, so the first outfit we're going to use is the classic TV show costume. So it's a kind of black sort of sequined affair, a little bit retro, very sort of vintagey classic vibes. So let's have a look at a few shots that I took using this one. Okay, the first shot. So this one, the first thing that took my eye here was the moonlight coming through the window, and moonlight through a window that has all of these interesting decorative elements meant that it created a nice sort of symmetrical shadow on the floor. Now, I usually don't frame my subjects centrally unless there is an element of symmetry surrounding the central point. So in this instance, I wanted to put Catwoman in the middle of that circle with the kind of shadow coming out from the center. And, to do that, I needed to have my character looking up at the ceiling, so it's shot from a high to low perspective. So once I'd got the framing right here, the character's in the middle, you've got the nice sort of silhouetted shadows of the kind of almost like spiderweb type window frame. What did I do? Well, I needed to make it a little bit more contrasty. I wanted a bit of a blue tinted filter because it's a nighttime shot. And because it's central, this is where your vignettes come in, because vignettes are there to make the borders darker. So you want to draw the central point of the image out so that that's where you're looking. Now the silhouetted shadows do that already, but the vignette is just another element that makes that possible. So this is what I ended up with, very interesting sort of framing, very high to low, nice sort of silhouetted borders around the character. It's almost like spider's web. It's very sort of hypnotic, vignetting, a bit of blue tinting and all that stuff. So I thought that was a kind of nice atmospheric one to start with. Okay, second shot, we're in the same building. Now this one was where I wanted to show an example of how you can use aperture and the depth of field. So in this instance, we have Catwoman, she's on one knee, look like she's about to pounce. So again, we're going to frame her centrally. So again, we'd use vignettes to darken the border area, frame Catwoman's face in the center of the shot, but then I didn't want the whole background to be crisp in focus because then it would draw your eye too much away from Catwoman. So this is a good example of how blurring the background helps accentuate your subject. The background has a little bit of blur in the final shot. So you get the colors, you get the lights, and you get the kind of scale of the building and the symmetry of the 2 sort of sides of it looking equal. So it has a nice symmetrical feel, but because it's out of focus, it doesn't overbear the image. So it's all about color and symmetry. And again, a little bit of, I didn't go too contrasty on this because I didn't want it too dark. A little bit of there's a little bit of purpley elements to the filter. I can't remember which one it was I used, but it's, a subtle coloration there. But again, that's an example of using the center of the image to focus your subject, a bit of vignetting. But the key with central for me, if you're going to put the subject centrally, it's about symmetry. So here we have symmetry, you look at the left and the right hand side of the image, they're the same. So it's like a symmetrical image naturally draws you to the center because symmetry is like all roads lead to the middle. So that's really a good example of that one. Okay, third shot. Now this one is something where it's sort of like a bit of action, but I wanted to do like a very tight crop, sort of just like the low neck to the top of the head. So we just want to get the facial features in. You look at the image and you think the skin tone is white. Most of the other things in the image are black or very dark. What does that say to you? That says contrast. Now what's good for contrast? Black and white. And then it was really just a case of dealing with the levels. You know, once you go black and white, you can be more severe with contrast because, you know, you're not dealing with colors blowing out of proportion. So I put a vignette on there. I did the contrast a lot higher so that the skin is very bright and the black elements in the image are very, very dark. And that's kind of the image I ended up with. It's maybe not the best portrait I've ever done, but it's a good emphasis to show you how a black and white filter or taking color out gives you more freedom to really make it a more poppy, snap out kind of image with black and white. You know, the black mask, the white skin, the black gloves, the dark background, you can see that contrast really makes it snap and like pop out of the image. Okay, last one with this outfit. It's so this one I wanted to do like a softer shot, like almost like a nice portrait, a nice soft colored portrait. So it was going to be like head and shoulders. And this is an example of using your environment. When you're taking pictures of characters, you've got to look at the environment and think about what things there are in the environment. Like what can you use in the shot as a sort of blurred background just to give it some color, give it some texture, give it a mood. So here we have this sort of stained window glass which has a pinky, purpley motif on it. I don't really know what it is. So I just wanted to put Catwoman to one side of it, get that in the shot, blur it out, and then use that as a guide for the split toning, for the filtering, to give it a nice pinky purple feminine touch to make it a softer shot rather than the harsh one we just did. And again, this is an example of a candid portrait. We've not gone for eyes to camera, we've gone eyes off camera. So it has more of a moody, observational, documentary feel rather than, you know, portrait eyes to camera. It's more subtle, it's reflective, it's got a nice sort of color toning. It's kind of like a beauty portrait in a way. So like that's the final shot. So it's very soft, very kind of pleasant colors. Yeah, you get a nice clear shot of Catwoman's facial features, the bit of the hair and the upper body, but it's more like what you would say a portrait. Okay, now let's move on to the second outfit, which is a more funky and modern one. It looks like a leather sort of skin tight outfit, something that would be more in keeping with like the Michelle Pfeiffer type style one from the Batman Returns movie. Okay, so the first shot, we're using Catwoman while she's kind of in motion. So she's swinging from the rafters using her whip. So her arms are up. We've got like nice, interesting lighting in the background. So first thing I thought with this is we're going to take that light, use it as a nice dreamy background. So we're going to really blur out the background, create that kind of dreamy effect. Because it's again a dark game, I like a little bit of vignetting to sort of darken out the borders, but like this one's really about the outfit. You know, it's a more evocative, provocative outfit. It's got more of a sort of a, you know, cleavage showing. So we're going to sort of tight crop the image. So it's like a midriff upwards. So it's kind of like an upper body, sort of first top third of the body in framing. So again, eyes off camera, dreamy background, little bit of filtering, little bit of contrast, and just like a sort of the facial expression isn't ideal, but you know, unfortunately you can't change that. It would have been nice to have some sort of more expressive because it's a bit like vacant, but again, it's just an example of upper body framing, thinking about the outfit, you know, thinking about the background, thinking about using the blur effect, aperture, because this shot wouldn't be possible if you weren't sort of high above the level, because you're flying essentially using the rafters to sort of fly from one place to another. So that's another way of getting interesting background. So that's the final shot. It's just a nice example of how you can blur out the background if you've got enough space between you and the background, using the lights, using the angle, and using the framing to kind of make the most of the outfit. Okay, second shot with this outfit, very similar framing and very similar action, but this one was just one I wanted to show you how you can use lighting again more creatively. So vignetting, filtering, framing was essentially the same in this one as the previous one. The facial expression is still quite vacant, but it's a little bit more, there's something more there. The key to this image that makes it different to the last one is the lens flare. Now, not all games have lens flare, but Batman does, and you know, lens flare, it's just where you can get the light at a kind of a point where there's a subject in the way of the light and it's just having it all visible a little bit. And then you get this nice sort of like camera effect to it. I don't think it always works, but sometimes you can use it with sunlight, sometimes you use it with like light in a environment. But the lens flare is another feature from the environmental lighting. So that's another thing you can potentially use to give your image some other type of quality, you know. Okay, this is the third shot with this outfit. Now this is probably my favorite shot with the outfit that we're going to see at the end. Now, taking pictures of characters in games, ideally what I would try to do is try and take a picture that captures the personality of the character, captures the mood of the moment. You know, for me, what is Catwoman? She's a kind of a very sort of mysterious figure in the kind of Batman universe. She's very sort of sensual, very beautiful, very kind of like desirable, but also dangerous. She's a bit like a sort of a prowling kind of wild cat who, you know, you don't know if she's going to like befriend you or kill you. So she's got that mystery and that kind of interest to her. But she's also got a feeling of like a showgirl or someone who's a performer. You know, like in my career, I've done work with like various sort of different performers, stage acts and stuff. And when I think about Catwoman, there is something of that about her. So like in this shot, I wanted to emphasize that in the next two shots, like use these lights in the environment and the misty haze. It looks like you're in a club or in a cabaret club where there's a performance going on. So I wanted to, you know, use that light as a sort of nice way to frame Catwoman. And then it was about getting the position. Now you can't choose the stance in Batman Arkham Knight, but what you can do, you can let your character stand there for a few minutes and then they start to do little actions, little motions, little emotes, I guess, that you don't have control of. And here is one where she's nicely sort of, her arms over her head, she's stretching to one side. And because of how I framed it from the back, you get a real clear definition of the physique and the sort of the leathery element of the outfit with the light shining on it, and then you have the lights in the distance blurred. It's got a very atmospheric, like performance type shot. This is a shot that really kind of like, I don't know, it captures something about what I feel Catwoman is about. And that's the key with photography when you're taking pictures of characters, is about your interpretation. But that's probably my favourite one in this outfit. And here it's the same type of situation, but what we've done, we've just turned her around. She's got her hand up, looking at her hand. Again, it's not a pose that's particularly amazing, but it's just another example of the same type of shot we just did. Different position. I prefer the previous one, but again, this is another example of how you can use the same situation twice if you just change it, you know, use some vignetting. It's a little bit darker this time. The color toning is slightly more blue. The other one was more purple, but again, that's just another example. Okay, so let's move on to the third and final outfit. This one is purple and it's very figure hugging, so we'll probably use it for silhouettes to emphasize that. So the first shot, we're shooting outside, so we're going to use the kind of motion climbing a rope, so like on all fours climbing across a rope. We've got moonlight in the distance, which essentially means we can make a sort of semi-silhouette. So again, with this one, because it's nighttime, I always go for a bit of blue tinting on that, and we've got a light source, so we've done the blue tinting. This was one I felt like in the normal framing, it didn't quite work, so I needed it to be more narrow. So this is where I used borders. Now I don't always use borders, but this one, it just seemed to take away some of the clutter. Sometimes black borders could just simplify your image, and sometimes you don't want too much clutter taking the people's attention away from what you really want them to look at. So I bumped up contrast, the blue tinting. I didn't really vignette this one because it wasn't necessary. And then you have that's the final shot. We have a nice sort of silhouetted, semi-silhouetted shot. We get a nice definition on the figure and we get a nice kind of like mood to it. Okay, the next shot. Now this is an example of aperture. Now we've used aperture to blur the background, but you can blur the subject as well. You can even blur the entire image. Now people might think, why? Well, I can't blur the whole image. That looks like an unprofessional shot. Well, I would disagree, because photography is about mood, and sometimes if you blur the entire shot, it actually can have a lot more resonance, a lot more mood. Now here we've just got Catwoman again, sort of standing with her hand on her hip. We've got some sort of shipyard buildings in the background, like a docks. We've got the moon, and we're going to silhouette Again, we're going to put some vignetting on. We're going to use the same blue filter. We're not going to contrast it as heavy as before because we want it to have some sort of haze. So we're just going to frame Catwoman's eye sort of 2/3 up, get her whole physique in, but we want it to be blurry. We don't want it to be totally blurry. It's just a bit off focus. It's like the sort of focus that I would have done in the background, but I've done it for the whole image. And it has this mysteriousness to it, which Catwoman is something that I feel kind of has about her character. You know, she is a mysterious character. Who is she? We don't really know Catwoman that well. So that's the final shot. It's, you know, don't be afraid of blurring the whole image because you can create some, like, I think that's very interesting. Very interesting, you know, kind of, you can see what's there, but you can't see it crystal clear. But that doesn't mean it makes it less of an image. In fact, I think it's probably better out of focus because it has more of a dreamy effect. Okay, just 2 more to go. So this one was one where Catwoman's having a stretch. So again, it's the kind of, in this one I thought, let's go for the height. So I've craned it down. So we've gone low to high. Low to high. What does it do? It creates a sense of scale. So Catwoman seems more epic in terms of her size and height. Admittedly, framing wise, I couldn't get, ideally I would have had the moon higher up, but it just wasn't possible with all of the architecture in the shot. But this is an example of trying to use the light source, but didn't quite work. Character stances, and how you place a shot in terms of the height of the camera to create scale. I like the shot. It's not my favorite. There's two, like for me, my criticism on my own image here. If you look in the top left-hand side of the image, like there's a whole chunk of image there that there's nothing happening. It's dead space. That's where the moon should be, but I couldn't get it there. That could be where a logo could go, for example, if you wanted to make the most of it. But like for me, that would be like too much dead space. But again, it's just another example of using height to create scale. Okay, now the final shot of the episode. So this was one where I really wanted to capture something about what Catwoman was about. So I used the same pose as we used in the nightclub scene with the lights shot from the back. This time we shot from the front. First difference is we are shooting front side. So we're using the moon as a way of framing Catwoman within the frame. Also going to use black borders to sort of take away some of the waste. Because what I really wanted with this shot was Catwoman doing this kind of like sort of sensual sort of stretching pose with the moon in the background, so she's silhouetted within the moon, maybe a little bit of cloudy this side. Now the moon is like a big flashlight, it's like a big light bulb, you know, again, it's how you use these light sources will dictate how the image feels, and it's finding the suitable pose. That pose I really like, and it's like that in the night cat on the prowl, or the night cat having a moment of reflection on the rooftops, like howling at the moon kind of feel. Again, color tone, I went for a bit of a blue, but it wasn't too severe. And, you know, didn't really vignetting, I don't think it was essential. When you're using borders like that, the vignette doesn't always apply. But for me, that's probably one of my favorite shots because it's got a sort of essence of the character. Again, like we were saying before, pictures of characters, it's about what do you feel for the character? Like what are you trying to convey? What's your perspective on them? And that's like an image that I think captures a bit of what Catwoman is about. Right, there you go. That was a lot of examples. I hope that's been useful. We use lots of different outfits, different methods, and I hope some of the tips and advice and just little pointers I gave you will be useful for you. Outfits are more important than you think, and they really can shape what the image is going to look like because it affects how you are going to take the picture. So think about that. Change outfits, use different outfits, see what happens. Right, there you go. That's another episode done. Thank you for watching. I hope it was a good one. Let me know. Yep, I'll work on another one soon. You can join the channel if you're interested, which would give you like members only videos, some early access to reviews, and, you know, comment priority, that kind of thing. If you want to join, there's a button on my homepage. But for now, this is Photography Gamer signing off. Thank you for watching another episode of the VP Guide, and I will speak to you next time. Cheers.